I would like, Tracy, I'm starting with you in roll call, by the way. But I would like to welcome everybody to the January 5th, 2026 public hearings and select board meeting. We're going to do a roll call to order, starting with Tracy, who is virtual.
Tracy is virtual due to an illness she wishes not to spread to the rest of that board.
Appreciate it.
Tracy.
Yep.
Samako present.
Capiello present.
Sakosha here. Now, Tracy, can you,
So we'll have this select board member make a motion to acknowledge and accept Tracy's virtual participation.
I move that we acknowledge the virtual participation of Chair Tracy Hardikoff and accept said virtual
I'll second
participation.
roll call?
Samako, aye.
Capiello, aye.
Sakosha.
Hardikoff will recuse herself on her own vote.
Perfect.
All right. Now, please, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We definitely have an echo.
Yeah, that was got through that one. That was awesome. Okay. Agenda review and approval.
Just one item to add on the consent agenda, an administrative abatement for $60 for a land use change tax bill.
So do we have a motion to approve January 5, 2026 agenda as amended?
So moved.
Roll
I'll
call.
second it.
Samako, aye.
Capiello, aye.
Sakosha.
Hardikoff, aye.
Good. All right, brings us up to public comment. I do not, we have a few people in studio. Is there anybody that would like to speak in public comment?
And this is a public hearing, and there will be opportunity for public comment during the public hearing component of tonight's meeting for both the operating budget and the warrant. So any public comment right now is certainly available for any topic, and then we will hold those two separate public comments for topics related to the budget and the warrant separately.
Okay, nobody in studio or online, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, and we're going to move on to public hearings and invited guests. First up is school board liaison. I do not see anybody in studio representing them, and nobody online, right?
I do not see anybody.
Okay, so that brings us to public hearing for the 2026 proposed operating budget.
Terrific. Thank you all. I will make a brief presentation that will give the conclusion of our 2026 budget development process. Before I begin, I'll point out a couple of things. First, this will be a summary. This will be an overall summary of what has been a months-long process with department heads and staff, the advisory budget committee, and certainly plenty of input from the select board. And so, although this is a summary, all of the details and backup information about everything I'm discussing is available on the town's website. We're very proud to make the entire budget binder available electronically this year at barrington.nh.gov/2026 budget. There will also be opportunity for question and comment from the public following the presentation before the select board makes a vote. So we'll make sure to reserve time for that. And as always, anybody is welcome to reach out to myself or anybody else in the town hall with questions about the budget proposal or what will be on the warrant. So real quick. Figure out how to advance the slide. There we go. So one slide summary. So what we will discuss is the operating budget proposal of $10,354,643, which is up 4.69%. The bulk of that increase is impacts from wages and benefits, also inflation, and the second half of the patrol officer that was added in 2025 contributed to those increases. Talk about the work that we do for that money. So that budget that is provided to the town to provide services to the community. We assess tax parcels. We issue almost 1,000 building permits, go on over 1,000 fire EMS calls, maintain 80 miles of road, et cetera. And so it's important that we understand the level of service that we provide for that approved budget. And as the budget increases and we look at maintaining the level of service we provide and the staff it takes to do so, or in areas that we look at expanding service, it's important to understand the impact overall. So talking about what we do with that money is important. Barrington is a large community, so all of those services we provide takes a lot of energy and effort, but we do that on a shoestring budget. Compared to our colleagues across the state, we provide a provision of local government in a very efficient manner. The work that we all do as staff in Barrington is guided by the select board's direction with a mission, a vision, and this year establishing a 5-year strategic plan. And so I think it's important that this is top of mind for department heads when they're preparing a budget proposal. It's reviewed during budget committee meetings so we understand what we're actually trying to accomplish as a local government. And so that's the select board's mission. These are the select board's values. And this year, the select board grew from prior strategic planning efforts to develop Barrington's first 5-year strategic plan for the select board. So this is a set of goals and action items that speak to the mission and values identified by the select board and achieving the master plan that has been updated with input from residents over the years. So those goals have been categorized into 4 key focus areas. Organizational excellence is 1, preservation of rural character is 2, planned investment is 3, and community engagement is 4. And so each one of these key focus areas has been central not only to the budget development process and individual warrant articles, but to what we do every single day in providing a provisional local government in Barrington. So these goals are included in the presentation. You can find them online, barrington.nh.gov/strategic plan. Won't read all of them, but as we discuss the warrant preparation and looking ahead to the voter guide and future updates to the voter guide, we'll tie in those components of the strategic plan that relate to each of those topics. So we're here at a budget public hearing. This is the proposed 2026 operating budget and warrant articles. I like to start with this level of detail because it gets right to brass tacks. In bold at the bottom of this slide, you see that with everything that's proposed, including petitioned warrant articles, if everything is approved by voters in March, there's an estimated tax rate increase of 31 cents and a tax bill increase for the average home of $119. So those components are broken out into increases from the budget, which you see is that first line, the 4.69% increase. The increase in warrant articles, again, which includes petition warrant articles, and any changes to the revenue overlay or veteran credit or fund balance utilization. And the net of all of those figures gives us the tax effort that we experienced in 2025. This is how much needs to be raised by taxes for the municipal government, and the projected tax effort for 2026 and the change to that. So like I said, I like to start there so we understand the scope of the impact of what we're talking about. So carrying that a step further, I put together this chart to show right now the 2025 tax rate is $3.39. Broken out by source, the green is the budget netted for revenues, credits, fund balance, and overlay. And then the gold there is the separate financial warrant articles that residents vote on separately. And so in total, that's where we get our $3.39 tax rate for 2025. Projected, again, if everything passes at town meeting in March, the projected 2026 tax rate would be $3.70. And so the reason that this graphic I think is important because this shows how the 2026 operating budget is presented with no tax rate increase. So approving the proposed increase to the operating budget won't increase property tax, the property tax rate from the 2025 level. And so you see the $3.21 of the proposed 2026 operating budget. So the 2025 tax rate covers 100% of the 2026 budget, and it also covers 37% of the warrant articles, with separate financial warrant articles which are proposed. So that 31 cents to go from 339 to 370, that's what's necessary to fund the remaining 62% of the separate financial warrant article. I'm going to pause here to make sure that makes sense, because I know we'll have questions on this through the process. Do you feel that's a valuable way to present that dynamic?
I think,
You got to unmute yourself, Lennon.
sorry. Yeah. I'm not sure it presents this in a way that makes sense to people, because we are increasing the operating budget. It's not just those top things in there. I'm not sure it's a valuable projection.
Okay. Yeah, and we can work on that. The trouble is, for the first time in Barrington, last year was the first time we funded 100% of the separate financial warrant articles from the tax rate. So previously we funded all of, or in some cases 50% of the separate financial warrant articles from fund balance. And that created a dynamic where those additional appropriations were not captured in the tax rate. So this year, because we have all those separate financial warrant articles, which are discretionary every year, the only thing that continues year over year is the operating budget. And so it does create an interesting dynamic. Maybe we'll spend some time at the budget committee meeting on Wednesday talking about ways to present that.
Yeah, I think the information is useful, but if you look at this chart, it says, oh, if we cut back on all the warrant articles, then we're good to go.
Right.
And that's not.
Because it's presented as a total. Yep.
Right.
With that on top. Okay. Moving forward, the 2025 to 2026 budget, the increase is $463,935. And as I mentioned at the opening, about 80% of that is wage and benefit impact factors, which isn't surprising. About 75% of our budget is wages and benefits for the staff that provide services to the community, and 21% is additional budget impacts. So looking at those wage and benefit impact factors, this is a summary of the wage and benefit impact factors. Again, all of those details are available in the budget binder, which is available electronically. These slides provide a link directly to those chapters. There were a few increases to wage and benefit impact factors, and then you'll notice some changes the library made had a reduction in wages, but an increase in benefits for a net increase in wage and benefit impact factors based on staffing changes. So the operating budget warrant article would read to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $10,354,643. Should this be defeated, the default budget shall be $10,186,851, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Majority votes required. This article is projected to add 0 cents per thousand of assessed value to the 2026 tax rate, or $0 to the tax bill on a $425,000 property. And as mentioned in the agenda, we'll take our recommendation votes tonight, and the advisory budget committee will take their recommendation votes on Wednesday. So that operating budget, we talked about what that operating budget proposal is in total. I think it's important to have some reflection on the financial stability of Barrington in general and historically speaking. This, I think, is a pretty valuable metric to understand the trends of not just Barrington as a municipal government, but all of the governments that are taxed in Barrington, which is the school district, the county, and the town. So from 2015 to 2025, the total tax rate increase experienced by the average homeowner is 32%. And inflation over that time is 35%. So those are the totals. If you do the math by individual taxing jurisdiction, it varies a little bit. You know, the town increase was from $1,165 to $1,441 over that 10-year period. But I think the important benchmark to understand is that over the last 10-year period, the growth rate of taxes paid in Barrington has matched inflation almost identically. Another valuable measure of financial stability is the fund balance that we retain. And so this chart shows that we have targeted and maintained at or above the 12.5% midpoint of our regular general fund operating expenditures dating back to 2016 and really beyond. One thing that you do notice is the amount of unassigned fund balance that we're using each year, either at town meeting or to reduce taxes, has been reduced significantly. And this, as we've discussed, is a result of budgeting tighter to our anticipated expenditures, and more importantly, budgeting our revenues much closer to what we anticipate. If you underestimate your revenues and you collect more than you estimate, then the tax rate is set on. That goes into unassigned fund balance and can be used in the future. And folks have appropriately pointed out that approach to estimating revenues is really disingenuous. So we bring our revenue projections much closer to what we anticipate. We hit those targets very close to what we estimate. And as a result, we have less surplus unassigned fund balance to use at town meeting or to reduce taxes. But the important part is that we maintain that 12.5% target as policy set by the select board. So the 2025 tax rate is $19.56. $14.28 of that goes to the school. The town retains $3.39 of that, about 17%, and $1.89 goes to the county. Here's a pie chart that represents the distribution of property taxes in Barrington. So for our portion, property taxes is always kind of front and center, but about 50% of what it takes to run the local government in Barrington comes from non-property tax sources. So those non-property tax sources include vehicle registration, fees for service, think the paying for a building permit or ambulance fees, et cetera, some state aid and miscellaneous revenue sources.
Was this about the same figure as state aid and federal aid for last year?
Yes. Yep. So yeah, there is no federal aid. I mean, that's the category because it'd be nice if we had some. We did during the COVID era. But the state aid is just two categories for Barrington. It's the rooms and meals tax distribution and it's the highway block grant. And so that represents 12% of our locally collected revenue, including property tax. And so you see this year, vehicle registration is 27%. We'll take this opportunity to point out that the state fees for motor vehicle registrations have gone up a lot starting January 1st. You'll start to hear that in the community. Folks registered their car last year for a couple $100 and it might be 25% more this year. It's not a flat increase across the board. There are different categories increase at different rates. But it's important to point out that those are all revenues that go to the state. The town portion of the motor vehicle registration, it's set by the state, but that wasn't changed in the legislation. So anyways, that's the funding for local government services. I mentioned that it's important to talk about what we do with the budget approved by voters that we implement year over year. So these are a sampling of data points from the various departments and what we do. Our assessing contractor assigns values to over 5,300 parcels of property. Building permits, again, almost 1,000 building permits issued, over 1,000 fire EMS calls, 80 miles of roads that we maintain. We appreciate that now more than ever this time of the year. Land use applications, they've been very busy, 70 applications. The library, over 70,000 borrowed items. Police responded to over 21,000 events or calls for service. Our Parks and Recreation Department has grown tremendously. In recent years, they offer over 40 programs and have had over 7,500 participants in the last year. Our tax office issues tax bills for the town, the school, and the county. Those tax bills total $36 million a year that we track and collect and issue liens on, and reminder notices and lien notices, et cetera. Town clerk registered over 13,500 vehicles and over 2,300 dogs. transfer station collects over 1,500 tons of trash and 463 tons of recycling. And so that's the level of service at a high level that we provide for the budget approved by voters. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but those red bars show Barrington's size for population, valuation, land area compared to all other 234 towns and cities in the state. So 80th, 83rd, and 87th percentile for the kind of core metrics that you would measure the size of a community. Our municipal tax rate, corrected for each of those areas of size, compared to the same 234 towns and cities in the state, put us in the 6th percentile, 10th percentile, and 8th percentile. And so I think this is the most dramatic representation of how what we do in Barrington for the municipal tax rate that we charge our residents is remarkable. It's a very lean provision of service, and compared to our colleagues across the state, we provide the level of service we do in a very efficient manner. Here's a couple of maps that show that. So this is every shaded red community in the state, Barrington is larger than for the applicable metric. So the top left is population, the middle is valuation, and then the right is the land area. So Barrington isn't a small community. By those metrics, look at how much red's on those maps. We're larger than each of those communities in the appropriate metric. And then looking at this map, this is looking now at our municipal tax rate. In each one of the metrics measured, first is just the portion of the total tax rate, and then it's corrected for population and land area and value, et cetera. Only those red communities, highlighted red communities, have a smaller municipal tax rate corrected for the specific metric than Barrington does. And so it's really a dramatic representation of what we do with the municipal budget provided by residents. So that wraps up the presentation I wanted to provide. Again, like I said, the entire budget binder is available electronically, 2026 budget, and more than happy to talk to anybody, resident, business owner, otherwise, about the budget proposal or details presented here or found elsewhere. So at this point in the process,
We will open up public comment
please.
because it is a public hearing. So if there's anybody in studio, I'd like to come up and speak on this item. Okay, nobody in studio. I don't believe anybody else has joined online. Double check me.
Give a chance, see if anybody puts their hand up. Anybody online interested in making public comment on the public hearing for the operating budget?
Nobody online, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the 2026 proposed operating budget.
Second?
I second, but does your motion include putting the budget as presented on the warrant?
No, those go separately.
It's separate? Okay.
No, that's this motion.
It is.
Yep.
Okay, so edited, I make a motion to present a budget of $10,354,643 to voters on the 2026 warrant.
Second is amended.
Roll call.
Mako, aye.
Mantrick, aye?
Capello, aye.
Koshai.
Hardikoff, aye.
Okay, excellent. All right, on to 2026 proposed warrant article finalization. There was an excellent sample packet in your packet. If you guys had a chance to review those. Once again, solid work.
So we'll need to go through these one by one.
So before we go one by one and spend a bunch of time, is there any warrants in particular that anybody had that anybody would like to set aside and talk about now? To where I'm assuming most of these articles are everybody, I assume, is okay with.
I would like to talk about the petition warrant articles.
I think we should do each of those separate.
Okay.
Okay.
I think as a matter of practice, we can do each of those separate. So certainly we'll open a public comment or public comment before we take any recommendation votes. And then we can look at the warrant articles sponsored by the select board, take a recommendation vote on those collectively, unless a board member wants to pull one off, do the petitioned articles separately. I have one additional petitioned article I'd like to talk about. And then we can, once we take a recommendation vote, then I think we should take a minute and look at the recommendation narratives in the draft of the voter guide to make sure the select board has an opportunity to refine or fine tune that language. So I guess maybe, Mr. Chair, start with any select board sponsored article that a select board member wants to pull out of the grouping. And so I would say this would be the list from 1 to 20. Is there any article from 1 to
I don't
20?
think they're numbered, are they?
Yeah, they're not
Right
actually
here.
numbered yet.
Well, they're numbered in the town administrator
Yeah.
report. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
How
Yeah,
about
they're-
if we do pages 2 through 6? Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, they are
And
numbered.
then
in there.
one's the operating budget.
Okay. This is a petition.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's 2 through 19 then.
one through 20.
Well, those aren't the article numbers. Those are just the numbers that are in the town administrator report
okay, gotcha.
listing the articles. They won't have numbers until we have a finalized list of zoning articles, because those have to be numbered before the
Gotcha.
operating budget and the rest of the articles. It's an annoying part of the process. So anyways, in the town administrator report, starting on page 2 with number 1, which is the operating budget, and going to page 3,
To
number
20.
20. And so that's the set of select board sponsored warrant articles. So is there any one of those that a select board member wants to make a recommendation vote on separate?
Tracy? You all set?
Yeah, I'm all set, ready to vote on everything that's been worked upon throughout the process.
So with that, maybe do public comment now and then start taking those votes.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up public comment for the 2026 warrant article finalization. If there's anybody in studio that'd like to come up and speak, you're more than welcome. If not,
And this would be any one of the individual warrant articles that will be on the warrant, to include the petitioned articles. So any article proposed on the warrant, now would be an opportunity to make public comment if you have an opinion you want the select board to consider as they take their recommendation vote.
okay. Not seeing anybody in studio or online, so we're going to go ahead and close public comment. And I will entertain to collectively make a motion.
So I'll move to make a motion to collectively recommend each article for approval that is not a petition article, because we're going to talk about those separately,
Great.
and to present these to the voters on the 2026 warrant.
Second,
Roll call.
Demaco, aye.
Nantrick, aye.
Happy LOI.
Sakoshai.
And Hardikoff, aye.
Terrific.
Awesome.
So petitioned articles.
21 through 23. Is there, and then we're adding one as well, right?
So there's one additional petitioned article, which I anticipate, and I'd like to discuss and get the select board's.
Have we seen this one yet?
So I met with a gentleman today.
Okay.
And so there aren't specific details, but we'll get to that after we go through these petitioned articles. So the first petitioned article, so there's the first 2 petitioned articles are connected in that the second one is contingent on passage of the first. The select board's familiar with these articles. We discussed them at the September 23rd joint select board meeting with the Conservation Commission. We did approach we attempted to avoid the need for a petitioned article, to find a kind of mutually agreeable cooperative approach to accomplishing concerns residents had about contributions to invasive species in our lakes, but also concerns from the Conservation Commission about the conservation fund dollars and utilization of those outside of kind of their normal practices. And so the petition articles were presented and certified, and so the first article would reduce the percent of land use change tax that goes into the conservation fund from 75% to 50%. And so the select board will need to take a recommendation vote on this article, separate than the other. But the second article, again, contingent on the first one being approved. If the first one isn't approved, then the second one, even if it is approved, will be null and void. The second article would establish an invasive species capital reserve and deposit $50,000 into that account. So the $50,000 is the estimate of 25% of land use change tax in 2026. So the financial impact of those two articles would be net neutral, which was important to the petitioner. And the select board would be the agents to expend for that capital reserve. So again, they're connected. The select board has to take a recommendation vote on them separately.
21, 22.
For 21 and 22.
So my comments on this is, I haven't seen a plan for how this $50,000 would be spent. So I feel like I'm being asked to vote on something without knowing where this money and how it would be used. I would prefer to see a committee get set up with town representatives, some select board representatives, representatives from our lakes, Conservation Commission, and whoever else we want to put on that, and really do some digging down over the coming year, and then come back with this plan or a different plan. But I don't have enough data to warrant at this point voting.
That's the
for them.
problem. We don't know, what the costs would be for some sort of mitigation. And, I appreciate the intent behind it, but I agree there's just a lot of data missing on how we would manage and dole out these funds, what would fall under, these, when we are very, very limited in how we can expend funds under these types of things. It has to be within the original intent of what was created. There's not enough information here. So I would be hesitant to spend funds out of this as a select board member without more detailed language.
Yeah, because is this including the Japanese weed knot that's on the side of the roads as well?
So I'll read you the language because Select Person Smalko makes an excellent point, which is that the language when an article, capital reserve article, is originally established. So this is, numbered 22 in the town administrator report. That becomes the guidance, the only guidance that the select board has to spend these dollars. So the purpose statement, for the purpose of funding or partially funding, control, treatment, and removal of invasive aquatic vegetation or fauna in water bodies in Barrington greater than 100 acres with general public access to launch watercraft, including non-motorized watercraft. So to your question about Japanese knotweed, I do not believe Japanese knotweed is an aquatic vegetation. So I think that probably, that's not the intent. I think it's milfoil, and I think North River Lake had a mite, and I think that's why they ended up adding fauna, because there could be other invasive items.
Do we know if the lakes, all of the lakes in Barrington have some kind of watershed management plan? Because, each of the lakes are probably quite different in what their needs are.
I'm not aware if they do or don't. If they exist, I haven't seen them for the lake. Is the select board prepared to take a recommendation vote first on the reduction of land use change tax to conservation fund?
I would move, because for me it ties
Public
into
was before.
to the next one.
I said
I would propose that we not recommend for approval the reduce land use change tax to conservation from 75% to 50%. But I'm happy to work on this issue with people during the coming year.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Do not recommend. And Mr. Chair, I don't know if somebody from the audience had a public comment. I tried to make it clear that the public comment for the public hearing was for all of the articles, but if there's somebody that wants to make a comment, the select board could reopen public comment.
Go ahead.
I would second that motion.
I think we're gonna.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and open it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jack Gale, 798 Berry River Road, both a member of the Conservation Commission and the trustee of the trust funds. So to the comment about how to use the money, the trustees would be very interested in how that's going to work. As when we see expenditures, we have to know they're within the guidance of what the voters elect to do. As far as this little dichotomy between the taking 1/3 or 25% of the land use change tax money that comes to the town, but putting 50,000 into the second of the articles as a reserve. I don't know what that does with what possibly could be a remainder. As the last 3 years, the average has been greater than $50,000 as far as what 1/3 of the land use change tax money would be. So that kind of, I assume that would leave the rest in general funds. Okay, I'm getting a yes. It's good to know where some of the money's going or not going. The Conservation Commission has reached out after we had that joint meeting in the fall, early fall last year, and to try to talk to some of the people. I think this right now affects Swains, and I don't know if Ayers counts now too, because now that it's got a more publicly recognized access point. But those are the two lakes that obviously would benefit the way this is currently written. We would like to work with the lake communities on something to address. We feel that just taking the money away, it leaves the whole question of non-flora and fauna treatments, which are ongoing with lakes, where they have to put chemicals in to treat other conditions. We are concerned that there could be a run on the land use change tax money where everybody may want to, let's get a piece of that, as it does not come from the tax rolls. It would not be seen as an impact on the tax bill. I know we haven't voted as a group. We've tried to get the people to come in and talk to us because we can't go and meet with them in a non-public fashion. And we haven't been able to get them to come here and talk with us. But we'd like to come up with something that's more equitable. Maybe we fund a program with maybe, we match you dollar for dollar up to a limit each year to help with the funding needs for various projects. But that has yet to happen. So I would be supportive of the proposal of getting key players together to talk about something. I would hate to have this turn into a fight over town monies at a deliberative and a town vote. I think we can work together to preserve the beauty of our lakes. And to the question about watershed preservation plans of any kind, don't know any other than we work with CELT and with our own, where we protect the land around the water. But as far as a specific plan that talks specifically about these major bodies of water, we don't possess one of those. We just protect the land that surrounds them, which is generally the best way to protect the water.
Excellent.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Okay,
Close public comment.
we're gonna go ahead and close public comment. With that, we have a motion up on the table.
I think
And a
Select Person Hardikoff seconded it.
Okay, so roll call.
Samaco, aye.
Patrick, aye.
Capello, aye.
Scotia.
Hardikoff, aye.
Okay,
Shall not be recommended unanimously.
yep. So then that drops us down to 22 as well, right?
Correct?
So a motion for number 22 of the town administrator report, article by petition contingent for the invasive species capital reserve, 50,000.
I move that we not recommend what is Article 22 in the town administrator's report for the invasive species capital reserve.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Samaco, aye.
Patrick, aye.
Capello, aye.
Scotia.
Hardikoff, aye.
Okay, that brings us next to number 23, by petition, increase service connected total disability credit from 4,000 to 5,000.
So this petitioned article was submitted on Christmas Eve and certified by the second supervisor of the checklist on this past Friday, January 3rd. And so this will appear on the warrant. This increases the service-connected total disability credit from the current maximum of $4,000 to the new maximum of $5,000. This was part of House Bill 99 legislation that went into effect July of this year, which the two main things that impact Barrington. So they clarified the language that the veteran credit, which in Barrington is $750, cannot be stacked with the service-connected total disability credit, which in Barrington is $4,000. So they also increased the maximum, which was previously $4,000, and the new maximum is $5,000. We've discussed this at a couple of meetings as we reviewed the exemption credit analysis, and the select board did not sponsor an article to make any changes. Those levels provided to residents in Barrington were deemed appropriate based on the review of the exemption and credit analysis. And so this is a petitioned article which has been certified and will be on the ballot, and the select board is asked to take a recommendation vote on that petitioned article.
So mostly just reiterating numbers for the public, but Barrington currently, we're proposing a $4,000 total disability credit. The county average is $2,385 and the state average is $1,897. So we felt as kind of stewards of the money that this was at $4,000 probably reasonable. And I'll personally stay with that vote of mine, but if the residents vote differently, that's where we go.
I agree. I find myself conflicted with this one because I completely understand where this person is coming from. This does change for those who were receiving both credits, but at the same time, this just shifts the burden onto other taxpayers, and we are already offering a much higher tax credit than most other municipalities. And, my household benefits from a veterans tax credit. And, I want to make sure that, we're honoring veterans, but at the same time, we also need to consider the impact. And if you look down at the bottom, in 2025, the impact of veterans tax credits was $614,000 in credits.
Dana?
I believe this is just for those with total disabilities. As I recall the number, it's 20 or 30, some
56.
Is it that many? Oh, surprise.
It was third when we first started increasing. So historically the maximum was 2,000, and in or about 2017 maybe, the state increased the maximum allowed to 4,000. And Barrington went through a process of incrementally increasing that up to the $4,000 maximum. When we started that process, there were 32 service-connected total disability credit recipients in Barrington. And so in the last year, in 2025, there were 56. That's the number. 56 recipients of the service-connected total disability credit.
So this applies to people with a total disability, not just every veteran out there that
Correct.
Comes out.
Total and permanent.
What are we thinking, board?
I think I'm feeling like let the residents decide on this, let everybody weigh in on it.
Well, we're supposed to make a
Certainly.
recommendation, though.
Yeah.
We have to make a recommendation. I guess we have to make a recommendation.
Yes. The residents will decide either way. So the article will appear on the warrant.
Could I be recognized, Vice Chair?
Yes, Tracy.
I want to point out very clearly, and this can be reviewed in the actual tapes or, videos of all of the meetings that led up to escalating to get to $4,000, that the intent of each board had been to get to that $4,000. And so in many ways, while I appreciate that people, due to whatever language, wording, or however the fluke took place, for those years that they were able to collect more or to not pay that $750 more, that is not being reversed in any way, but it was not the intention when the process began. And I agree, it is certainly up to the voters if they would like to support this. I personally do not feel that I can comfortably ask the rest of the taxpayers to support $1,000 more, especially given that when we began the process, the numbers of permanently and totally disabled veterans that were being supported were significantly less.
Okay, well, so you're not in support of it, right? Is that what I'm
So
getting?
it's just asking for my recommendation, and I would
Right.
not be recommending it.
So I'm gonna put out a motion not to recommend the increased service-connected total disability credit from 4,000 to 5,000.
Okay, and I would second that.
Okay, roll call.
Samako, aye.
Mantrick, no?
Capello, aye.
Sakosha, aye.
Hardikoff, aye.
So not be recommended by a vote of 4-1. That's what we presented on the warrant. And I will point out, with any of these articles, anything can be changed at deliberative session. Any article that is changed at deliberative session would be eligible for an updated recommendation vote. If there are no changes at deliberative session, a recommendation vote cannot be changed. So only articles that change at deliberative session can have an updated recommendation vote. So today, sorry, before I move on, Mr. Mantrick.
No.
Oh.
Holding my helmet.
Sorry.
Go hold my head for me.
A resident in Barrington came to Town Hall today with an interest in petitioning a warrant article to increase the income limit for the married elderly tax exemption. So right now, the income limit for the married elderly tax exemption is $50,000. If you have income of $50,000 or more, you're not eligible. And so this resident is interested in increasing that and had expressed an interest in increasing it to 75,000, from 50,000 to 75,000. So as I do with residents interested in participating in the petition warrant article process, explain the process and the requirements and the deadline of January 13th. And he understood the process, motivated, felt confident that he could put the petition article together. It sounds like he'll probably come back in and give me an opportunity to look over the language, make sure everything is legal and appropriate before he gets signatures, and feels pretty confident he'll be able to get the 25 signatures. So knowing that that warrant article is in the pipeline, I'd give the select board the opportunity to take a preemptive recommendation vote. If you don't take a recommendation vote, we'd have to set another public hearing meeting for what would be the 20th of January, whereas our next meeting is the 26th. So, our next meeting is the 26th. We'd have to set a meeting for the 19th, which is a holiday, or the 20th is the last day. So that the recommendation vote would be recorded on the warrant, posted for deliberative session. So is there interest in taking a preemptive
Get
recommendation?
the title of that again, the elderly married?
For the elderly exemption, so the category is the elderly exemption. The criteria that is being proposed to be changed is the income limit for the married applicant. So the single applicant income limit is 36,000. The married applicant limit is 50,000. And the proposal, as I understand it today, is to bring it to 75,000. But for the purposes of a recommendation vote, I think, if it's all the same, you could probably take a recommendation vote on increasing the married income limit. So if it's 60,000 or 70,000 or 75,000, that recommendation vote would carry.
How's the board feel? What are we thinking?
Do we have numbers of how many people this affects?
So unfortunately, we don't. And this is similar to the select board sponsored increase to the disabled exemption single income limit from 30 to 36,000. We don't have a list of people that just barely don't qualify for the exemption. So we know that it increases the opportunity for somebody to apply and be eligible for an exemption, but we have no data that we can rely on to know how many new people would be eligible. And so that's where it becomes very difficult to anticipate what the impact would be. And obviously, even if somebody is eligible, that doesn't mean they will apply. And so this obviously just changes one of the criteria. There would still be an asset limit, which I believe is at 125,000. I'm looking to you, Select Person Capello, just because I know you haven't printed in front
I
of you.
don't
The asset
see it
limit
here. You might.
above or below it. So the asset limit's 125,000 for single or married. So the select board has obviously always approached exemptions and credits from a data-driven decision-making process and standpoint. And so the more generous, the county is more generous than the state, and the county income limit is 53,000, and Barrington's is 50,000.
Right, $315.
So the Barrington is pretty close to the income limit in that area. And obviously that's not an accident because the select board has looked to that data to support any sponsored changes. So no, we won't know what the impact will be. The select board certainly doesn't have to take a recommendation vote tonight. If we do receive the petition and it's certified, we'd convene for a quick meeting to take a recommendation vote on that.
I think it's a little blind to make a call on it. You know?
So what
I
I'm
agree too.
looking at is if, let's say we increase it to 55,000, so it would be a little above the county average, but then we would need to look at all of our exemptions. We're below the county average on some. I would want to treat everything the same.
So we'll table this, and then if it comes picks up and becomes certain,
We can do that.
Tracy.
I would agree.
Okay.
Perfect. So now we have a recommendation vote for all the warrant articles. We've taken a vote to present them onto the warrant, and we have a zoning amendment public hearing tomorrow night. There is up until January 26th, the opportunity to have an additional zoning public hearing if necessary. So we might not have final numbering of the warrant until the final zoning public hearing. The warrant has to be posted on the 26th. So that's when final numbering would happen. But I will update these documents with recommendation votes. I'll update the voter guide with the recommendation votes, and that will be enough until we're presented with any more petitioned articles or following deliberative session. So before we move on, I'd like to spend a moment, Mr. Chair, if you would, on the voter guide. So I'm very proud to have an early draft of the voter guide. We wrapped up the budget process earlier this year in December, so we focused our energy and attention on putting together this annual document to give the best opportunity for it to reach as many people as possible. So the community voter guide for select board for town warrant articles is set up with the ballot language, an objective explanation, what this article does, a block with the advisory budget committee's recommendation and a narrative explaining that recommendation vote, and then a block with the select board's recommendation, which we just recorded, and a narrative explanation of that vote. So what I'd like to do for the purposes of recording in the minutes and for the purposes of incorporating any input from the select board, I'd like to just read the select board's recommendation narrative and give any opportunity for input or change and then move on.
Sure.
Without objection, we'll start. So operating budget article, the select boards. So all of these articles are unanimously recommended until we get to the petitioned articles, as we know. The select board's expectation is that the town administrator, finance administrator, department heads prepare a budget proposal which maintains Barrington's existing level of service and meets the demand for additional services. In 2025, the select board established a strategic plan which identifies organizational excellence as a key focus area. They feel the budget as presented appropriately balances costs with the level of service consistent with the strategic plan. The select board is proud of the work staff has done to continuously secure millions of dollars in grants to offset the cost to taxpayers. Seeing head nods, moving on. This is highway heavy equipment capital reserve contribution of $300,000. Unanimously recommended. They feel that Barrington has a very successful program to save funds in advance of large expenditures. Maintaining Barrington's road infrastructure is a core service and top priority for the select board, identified in their strategic plan. See planned investment. Focus area. Following a data-driven equipment replacement schedule helps to ensure our trucks are on the road when they are needed most. Support from voters is essential because missing an annual contribution to these savings accounts sets the expenditure plan behind. These funds are outside of the operating budget and require select board approval for all expenditures, which are also monitored by the elected trustees of the trust funds.
So I actually would make the change that you ad-libbed there, planned investment focus area, because
Yes.
somebody's gonna read this and think that we're like taking, I mean, the town does have investments, but they're gonna think that it's gonna get misread.
Thank you. Yes, terrific. So I'll add the C planned investment key focus area.
Yes.
Yep. In parentheses there. Okay, paving and related road work, non-lapsing article. This is $150,000, unanimously recommended. Maintaining good roads is of the utmost importance to the select board. The select board invested in a comprehensive pavement management plan in 2021, which is being updated for the 2026 paving season, and the board remains committed to implementing the recommendations. A core recommendation of the plan is to gradually increase annual paving investments to $1 million. The proposal in 2026 is $999,000, which is $700 from the operating budget, $68 in state funds, $81,000 in the remaining 2025 non-lapsing funds, and this $150,000 warrant article. This is an increase from $900,000 in 2025. The town will not be able to keep up with the plan in 2026 without these additional non-lapsing funds. Terrific. Public safety building space needs, site selection, engineering, and impact fee study. This is a $150,000 article, unanimously recommended. They firmly support the proposed $150,000 for a space needs analysis, site selection, engineering, and impact fee study to address deficiencies of our current police and fire building. They feel that as our town grows in residents and households, we need to react to today's needs and plan for future needs of our municipality. With an impact fee study, we can plan to shift some costs from current residents to future residents and offset taxation for Barringtonites while still providing great public services.
Do we want to say anything about, there are inadequacies of the facilities?
We shall.
Put that in.
So maybe after the first sentence, which identifies deficiencies, maybe we mention some of the specific deficiencies.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, that's what I meant.
Okay, what's top of mind for board members?
I think, excuse me. Anyone? My thoughts are that the police evidence room and the
Sally Port?
port call,
Yep, the Sally Port.
Sally Port, thank you, are insufficient and in fact put us at some risk.
Of prosecuting cases.
Right.
If we can't guarantee secure locations to store vehicle for investigation. Okay, put us at risk.
There's also just some upgrades and repairs of the building.
Yeah, yeah.
Deferred maintenance.
Yes.
Okay.
I would, yeah, but that could just be covered with an increase in your maintenance budget.
It could, but I think we're getting to the point of more significant.
Oh, I agree.
So deferred maintenance requiring substantial improvements. Substantial.
Well, I mean, we have been taking care of the building.
And one of the purposes of this is to actually survey that and see what needs to be done.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe take that out. I mean, I'm sure Chief Joy will be there to share some information.
I don't want to make the public think we deferred maintenance that was.
I mean, there are some ongoing problems, but we do take care of the building, certainly to the extent.
Actually made some fairly significant improvements.
Yeah, well, this year, improvements and repairs.
And, staff space, we have, our
Sleeping
officers
spaces.
are are really cramped in there. We just took half of the female locker room and turned it into a patrol sergeant office so that they had space to be able to process cases and things like that. Officer space. I heard bunking areas on the fire side. Okay.
Those
Equipment storage,
are
yeah.
details.
Equipment storage, yep.
You could easily get from the.
So I'll add a sentence which specifically identifies describing deficiencies, the hurdles with police evidence storage, the Sally Port deficiencies that's insufficient and puts us at risk, officer space, bunks on the fire side, and equipment storage. Okay. Yeah. Terrific. Thank you
I
for
was,
that.
fairly certain at one point that the police chief indicated we also did not have entrance and exit areas or segregated areas so that, say, a minor child who was a victim of a crime, in order to not re-victimize that child, we did not want them to be exposed to adult suspects, perpetrators, whatever the terminology is. I'm pretty sure that he mentioned we needed space very specifically for that as well.
Yes, yep, minor juvenile segregation issues.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Okay, I'll integrate those specific bullet points into the narrative.
I think at the deliberative session, Chief is going to explain in great detail, but as we know, the majority of the voters don't go to the deliberative session, so I think it needs to be would be useful to have it in the voter's guide.
Yeah.
And then, this is why we're here, so that's terrific. Moving on, fire truck capital reserve. This is a $100,000 contribution. Select board unanimously recommends it. They feel that Barrington has a very successful program to save funds in advance of large expenditures. Replacement costs are not optional to maintain fire and safety services. Support from voters is essential because missing an annual contribution to these savings accounts sets the expenditure plan behind. Ongoing resident support has positioned Barrington favorably to be able to replace expensive fire apparatus from savings without the need for a bond or ongoing interest costs. These funds are outside the operating budget and require select board approval for all expenditures, which are also monitored by the trustee of the trust funds. Moving on, municipal facilities maintenance capital reserve unanimously recommended. This is $80,000. Establishing and following thoughtful facility care and maintenance plans has been a goal of the select board. The board is proud to support this capital reserve contribution alongside a multi-year plan to keep our facilities well cared for. Planned investments in our facilities will help avoid costly emergency repairs resulting from deferred maintenance.
Angels could do no more.
Police equipment capital reserve. This is a $30,000 contribution, unanimously recommended. The select board, they feel that Barrington has this very successful program to save funds in advance of large expenditures. The board is proud that our community was among the initial wave of New Hampshire police departments to adopt body-worn cameras in 2020. That commitment to transparency and support for our law enforcement officers has come at a nominal cost. The next big ticket purchase is a computer replacement in 2027. Staff secured a $100,000 grant to purchase the computers used today, and they will be replaced with funds set aside in this capital reserve account. Barrington has gradually saved for that cost over the last 4 years. Support from voters is essential because missing an annual contribution to these savings accounts sets the expenditure plan behind. These funds are outside the operating budget, require select board approval for all expenditures, and monitored by the trustee of the trust funds. Emergency communication upgrade capital reserve. This is a $25,000 contribution, unanimously recommended. Select board, they feel that Barrington has a very successful program to save funds in advance of large expenditures. In recent years, this account was well used for its intended purpose. By saving a regular amount year over year, the community was able to upgrade vital communication equipment as planned without the need to borrow or approve a one-time large expenditure. Support from voters is essential because missing an annual contribution to these savings accounts sets the expenditure plan behind. The select board is glad that the contributions to this savings account can be reduced based on upcoming needs. These funds are outside the operating budget, require select board approval for all expenditures, which are monitored by the trustee of trust funds. Bridge and Culvert Capital Reserve, $15,000 contribution, unanimously recommended. Select board, they feel that Barrington has a very successful program to save funds in advance of large expenditures. The capital improvement program has nearly $15 million worth of bridge culvert infrastructure projects in the coming years. Most of these projects are in the design phase, and the select board is optimistic that staff will continue finding grant funds to offset costs. In 2025, the Old Settlers Road Bridge replacement began with a $1 million plus grant from the state. Partial grant funding may be possible for some of the remaining bridge and culvert projects, but the majority of the funding will need to be bonded in an upcoming year. Support from voters is essential to avoid costly emergency repairs. These funds are outside the operating budget, require select board approval for all expenditures, also monitored by trustee of the trust funds. Moving on, Transfer Station Recycling Center Capital Reserve. This is a $10,000 contribution, unanimously recommended. Select Board feels that Barrington has a very successful program to save funds in advance of large expenditures. Support from voters is essential because missing an annual contribution to savings accounts sets the expenditure plan behind. The Select Board formed Transfer Station and Recycling Center Review Committee for the primary purpose of evaluating current and future facility needs. Their work, funded by this capital reserve account, included a recently completed feasibility study which advises improvements to be made in the coming years. These funds are outside the operating budget, requires Select Board approval for all expenditures, which are also monitored by the trustee of the trust fund. Fire and Rescue Equipment Capital Reserve, $10,000 contribution, unanimously recommended. They feel very successful programs save funds and advance large expenditures. Support from voters is essential because missing an annual contribution to these savings accounts sets the Select Board expenditure plan behind. These funds are outside the operating budget, require Select Board approval for all expenditures, which are also monitored by the trustee of the trust fund.
Yep. Do we want to say something about how essential this equipment is to protecting our firefighters and EMS?
Yes.
Think of a sentence in there might be.
Yep. After the last, or just before the last sentence, maybe.
Yeah.
Essential.
Well, yeah.
The
I mean, we're talking about saving fund, but I think what we really want to, I think we want to emphasize the importance of this to protecting people's lives.
So this equipment is essential for the safety and capabilities of our first responders.
Exactly. Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, so we have two articles which are contingent. The first is closed library and community center capital reserve. This closes a warrant article with just over 28,000 in it, and the select board unanimously recommends that, and they say they are glad the library project was finished under budget and support returning these capital reserve funds back to taxpayers as revenue to offset taxes.
Yay, awesome.
And then the next one is the library technology capital reserve contribution.
Take it back.
Yeah, well,
Not all of it, not all of it.
well, do we want to add in that for the closing the capital reserve? Do we want to add a sentence that says that identifies that the select board also supports,
But there's still additional needs from the original construction implementation of the new library.
well, maybe not there. Well, yeah,
That didn't word that correct very well, but the essence is, yes, we did it in that budget. Now we need to, but we still need to
do the technology part. So we'll add a note about the 15,000 to the capital reserve.
Yeah, you actually have a number in there.
Right. So which is the next article, library technology capital reserve contribution, which is larger than normal. This is 15,000, which is unanimously recommended. And they feel, the Barrington Select Board, Barrington has a very successful program to save funds in advance of large expenditures. Support from voters is essential because missing an annual contribution to these savings accounts sets the expenditure plan behind. At the November 17, 2025 meeting, the Select Board discussed the building project surplus and future technology needs with the library trustee chair. Library trustee chair that explained that fully funding the library technology capital improvement plan would mean that there would not need to be an annual contribution to this capital reserve in the next few years. If both article to close the capital reserve and this article pass, there will be a net positive impact on the 2026 tax rate of 0.6 cents. These funds are outside the operating budget, require library trustee approval for expenditures, and are also monitored by the trustee of the trust funds. Okay, we like that. Police collective bargaining agreement. This is ratifying the cost items of the collective bargaining agreement and appropriating $70,828. Unanimously recommended, and the select board says it remains challenging to hire qualified employees to protect our community, and retention of our highly trained law enforcement personnel is essential. The proposed total compensation changes are likely to help the town retain our existing employees and help attract from a broader pool of applicants for future vacancies. Approval of the cost items contained in this article allows the select board to implement the collective bargaining agreement, which will be in place for 3 years. Negotiations for this 3-year contract were efficient and amicable, taking only 2 sessions. The select board reviewed and approved the terms of the collective bargaining agreement on December 1st, 2025. Perfect. Highway transfer collective bargaining agreement. We're under contract here, and we have made a proposal to the highway transfer station union to implement the recommendations of the total compensation study. The specifics have yet to be finalized, but we have the cost items for implementing that at $22,612. And so the proposed recommendation narrative of the select board remains committed to treating union and non-union employees as equitable as possible. The cost items in this contract provide wage increases for the employees of the bargaining unit in the same manner as other town employees, consistent with the recommendations of the total compensation study. At a time when it's challenging to hire qualified employees to plow our roads, retention of our skilled workers is essential. Then there's an article for renegotiation and vote if the cost items fail, and the select board's recommendation narrative would be if voters do not approve the cost items of the collective bargaining agreement, it will be important to make adjustments and seek voter support before the following March.
Just the language of the following March is a little bit vague.
March 2027?
Yeah, I think that's better.
And it means we need to have a separate town meeting.
Correct.
Maybe say that.
Okay. So the explanation says if voters defeat the cost items of the collective bargaining agreement costs, the terms will need to be renegotiated. Cost items of the new terms would need to be presented before voters at a special meeting. Passage of this article would allow the select board to call a special meeting for that purpose. Do you want to reiterate that in the select board's?
You know, it doesn't hurt because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to
Put a lot, yeah, more weight in that.
It's a lot easier to read.
Okay, so separate, special. Perfect. Moving on, we have the Appoint Capital Improvement Program Committee. So this is unanimously recommended. They feel, this is the select board, that this adjusted approach to preparing and amending the capital improvements program will allow more time and attention to be paid to this essential planning. Importantly, the statute, RSA 674-5, still requires participation from a planning board member to help maintain the connection between the master plan and the CIP. Following a discussion at the joint planning board meeting and select board meeting on November 17, 2025, the select board voted to place this question on the ballot. Additionally, in conversations with the advisory budget committee members, there is interest from that group to become more actively involved in Barrington's capital planning. The ABC does an excellent job reviewing the operating budget, and the select board has every confidence that the ABC will add great value to the CIP process. Terrific. So we have 2 articles relative to games of chance. First is Keno. The select board unanimously recommends this. They feel that Barrington, and this is to prohibit Keno, they feel Barrington voters have already made their perspective clear by voting against Keno in 2018, 2019, 2020. Now that the state changed the rules, Barrington voters will need to vote again before June 2027 to actively disallow Keno in Barrington. Relative to games of chance, unanimously recommended. They feel Barrington voters have made their perspective clear by disallowing Keno at 3 separate elections. They feel that Barrington does not have the infrastructure or support services to support a games of chance licensee.
So does everybody understand what games, oh, I guess you have it here. Did you define games of chance?
So let's see. In 2025, House Bill 737 established a new law allowing municipalities to opt out of allowing games of chance. Currently, the State of New Hampshire Lottery Commission issues licenses for games of chance. The new law allows voters to decide if games of chance licenses are allowed to be issued within their community. Charitable gaming sites are required to share their profits with charities in the state. 2024, Senate Bill 472 was signed into law allowing host municipalities to apply for profit sharing at the same level of charities. So yeah, maybe we should add in there after the first sentence, definition of games of chance. Wish it'd say Revo Casino. People know.
Right.
Although there is more to it. Okay. So that's prohibiting games of chance. Now we have the select board sponsored change to exemption, which is unanimously recommended. They feel that it is important to regularly review the support our town provides to those property owners eligible for exemptions and credits. They are proud that our town provides exemptions and credits that are more valuable than the state average in every area. Although the married income limit is the same for the elderly and disabled exemption, the single income limit is not. This article would bring the disabled income limit to match the elderly income limit at $36,000. Terrific.
Right.
Now we have petitioned articles. So we'll probably have to add some meat on the bone here because obviously I didn't know how the select board is going to vote. But the select board unanimously does not recommend reducing the land use change tax from 75 to 50. And so far, as a starting point, what I have is they feel that the current arrangement with 75% of land use change tax to the conservation fund is appropriate. Land conservation is a core part of Barrington's rural character, and utilizing revenues from land use change tax is a way to fund conservation priorities without the need to raise additional funds through taxation.
So, so my sense in looking at the minutes from the ABC and, texting you today, Connor, is that the impetus for this didn't come from the ABC, which when I read this, it sounds like it does. I mean, it actually came from the petitioners as a way to fund the following petition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we just need to say that.
Maybe in the blue area. Or so in
Somewhere.
in the select board's recommendation, and speaking back to your comments about finding a solution for this, but just not this solution, maybe there's an opportunity to say that we understand the petitioner's intent is to find a way to support the treatment of invasive species in our lakes. And that's the select board shares that priority, but is interested in finding a solution which doesn't reduce the funding availability for the Conservation Commission. Something like that?
Yeah, I like that.
I seeing a head nod. Others?
Sounds good.
And then I would question what you wrote for the ABC. Did they come out this strong about?
Well, they'll review
They'll
the
come up with
Wednesday.
this,
on Wednesday.
right?
And so I shared with you in text, but the budget committee's conversation about the conservation fund in recent years, like the last 3 years, has focused on the Richardson Pond Dam. And the budget committee has been consistent in their perspective that the conservation fund should fund 100% of the Richardson Pond Dam project because for these reasons, conservation fund has ample funds to not only do that, but also address the other priorities. And so that's kind of a carryover perspective of how that's evolved. But no, they'll review this on Wednesday. They'll take a recommendation vote and they'll go through a process of reviewing the recommendation narratives.
These two, this and the following one, came from the same person with the intent that we reduce the land use change tax for the purposes of diverting it for the petition warrant article that follows this. But I do think that, and I'm open to input as to whether or not this is appropriate, but I think it needs to be clear, especially because you hit this one first, that this was designed to go hand in hand with a second one, because I do think that there's a possibility that people look at this independently from the contingent warrant article and see, since it says that it goes into the general fund, this as a way to just divert funds. And while the voters can do what they're going to do, this does not necessarily tell you that this is related to a second warrant article.
Yeah, so let's workshop how we do that, because a possible reality is that this article passes and the next article fails. So if that happens, exactly what you're talking about happens. The tax, what's the net, what's the individual impact? 2.2 cents. This would have a 2.2 cent positive impact on the tax rate if just this passes and not the next one. And so this isn't contingent on the other one passing.
Right.
The other one is contingent on this one passing. And so I think we need to walk the tightrope of explaining objectively that if you approve this article, the money will go to the general fund. And also find a way, which I understand that this language doesn't do this right now, but find a way to explain that these articles were presented collectively as petitioned articles for a collective purpose of, protecting our lakes. Maybe it's just a separate, like, red box that says note and says, please review article number, the next article. These two petitioned articles were presented together for the shared purpose of the second article. Something like that.
Yeah.
If council would, if given the changes to the electioneering laws, if council would sign off on that, I think that would be good. Otherwise, I just think as presented, this just looks like a way to put more funds into the general fund for purposes of, property tax issues, not because there's a secondary, not that because there's a specific reason for this being presented, which I think also could just make things look a little bit murky. So I do think just making clear, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, it's possible that this passes and the other one doesn't, and we will deal with that. I just, as long as that is approved by council, I think making a note on there that it should be reviewed in conjunction with the following one is a good idea.
And we can include the same note. It's fortuitous that we have our own contingent article, because we can make the same note on the library article. And on the closing of the capital reserve, library and community center capital reserve, we can include a note that says, please review the next article, which is contingent on this article passing. And, I don't want to say intended to be reviewed together, but, give a nod, like you should pay attention to that. Something else I texted to Select Person Capiella was that after deliberative session, or maybe I didn't, but I thought it, to bring it up now. After deliberative session, we'll have an opportunity likely to have a public on the record explanation from the primary petitioner of their intent and purpose in presenting the articles. So we don't have that right now. There's nothing that we could include in here. It would just be conjecture. But yeah, I've talked to Mr. Allard a lot.
I mean, the applicant has been very clear about it and discussing it, or the petitioner.
But following deliberative session, we could pull a transcript of a couple of sentences that he presents and find a way to include that in here because again, then it's not our words and it's not paraphrasing what he's saying, but it's just, hey, at deliberative session, the primary petitioner explained that X. We don't have the opportunity to do that now. So maybe in the meantime, we'll include the note that ties it to the next one and encourage folks to read both articles kind of together so they understand the full scope and don't come to the premature conclusion that, oh, this is just a way to reduce taxes, which, isn't the intent. And then in the select board's recommendation narrative, say something to the tune of, we understand that the intent of petitioners is to protect our lakes, which is a priority which the select board shares. The select board is interested in finding a more cooperative approach that does not reduce funds to our conservation efforts.
Like that, yeah. And what you can't say intent in your note, you could say draft it together.
Draft it together. Yep.
Awesome.
I like that. Okay, that was really helpful. And so moving to the next one, which I think is a little bit easier because this is the meat and potatoes of the two articles. But the select board unanimously does not recommend this, and they feel that Barrington would benefit from an incremental approach to contributing public funds to the treatment of invasive species. They believe that lake health in Barrington is very important, but that importance needs to be balanced with impacts to taxpayers. The select board has supported the stakeholders, including lakefront property owners and the Conservation Commission, coming together to identify a sustainable solution, which obviously we're going to add similar language to the prior article as well.
Yep.
I'm sort of chuckling at what you wrote for the ABC. Would they be willing to sponsor some legislation or encourage Senator?
Well, so that's what they said.
Representative Turcotte to do that?
Yeah, we'll see.
All right.
Okay, so now we have the increase to the service-connected total disability credit, which we have a recommendation not to recommend 4-1. So we'll have a majority perspective and a majority perspective. Minority and majority, I don't know what I just said. So the majority perspective would be that they feel that Barrington residents have approved appropriate credit levels. In 2019, the select board supported a multi-year incremental approach to not brining, but bringing Barrington service-connected total disability credit from 2,000 to 4,000. In 2025, the total of Barrington's various veteran credits was 614,000, which represents about 10% of the total amount of the town's portion of the property tax rate. Maybe in that, based on discussions earlier, maybe we eliminate that last sentence and replace it with the average, the state and county average, which select person Capiello mentioned.
Yeah,
I
Those
also,
would be important.
sounds good to me.
I also think it might be helpful to include something along the lines of what Tracy said, was that the change to the legislation wasn't to the intent behind, or well, not using the word intent, but the change to the legislation was to close a loophole, not to reduce, not to, affirmatively reduce the tax credits.
Mhm.
Awesome. And I think that wraps that up, right?
Did you want to say something
I need to
about
do
your?
I need to do a minority. So
Yes.
A majority and a minority.
yep. So what I heard was there are a limited number of property owners eligible for service connected total disability credit.
And the state has authorized it to go to 5,000 at this point.
And state, so there's a limited number. State has authorized a new maximum, and Barrington has historically aimed to provide the
Right.
maximum.
Right.
Has
That would be my next, that's good phrasing, though.
has historically aimed to provide the maximum veteran credits. Okay, terrific. Yes, that's everything. I think Select Person Capiello wanted to discuss the next page. This is page 30 of the voter guide relative to future planning in the capital improvement program.
Yes, so two comments. The first one is less substantive, but this is such a text-heavy document. I think that maybe bulleting the projects in the second paragraph,
Good idea.
and even somewhat in the third paragraph would help. But what I think is missing here is we're asking the voters to vote for a CIP committee, and yet there's nothing in here that talks about how that CIP committee could inform these decisions about how to address infrastructure problems. So I would suggest something like, so you list the projects in the second paragraph, and then you could say, one approach is the bond, and, that's all good information. The value of a CIP committee would to provide additional input about how the town might approach its infrastructure needs.
Yeah, like priorities, provide input
More detail.
on.
Yeah, because otherwise it kind of feels like we've made the decision and yet we're asking for this committee.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Providing details, prioritizing.
And I think it would be really helpful to have more voices in how we address our
I like that.
needs, but also our costs.
More voices. Yep, that's terrific. And one of the things that I have on my to-do list, like I said, I wanted to get an early draft of this because we had an opportunity. One of the things I'd like to do now that we have that infrastructure communications plan that I presented a draft of on November 17th to the Planning Board and Select Board. Now that we have that plan, I'd like to start implementing that and tie it into this page somehow. So probably that would be like retooling this whole paragraph to just be like maybe a graphic from that communication plan that's that kind of takes that text heavy approach of all these projects, and maybe it's some graphic or a map that identifies the locations of the projects with a bulleted point, because that's where we're going with that communication plan as we gear up for 2027. And so I think we have an opportunity now to start laying the groundwork, a little bit early in this. So I didn't have time to do that for this version, but I think that's part of my goal. Select board's happy with those adjustments. I really like that
Good. Anything
tying
else?
into that other article.
Before we mosey on to the consent agenda?
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Consent agenda.
What's the text here? I move to approve that consent agenda as listed.
A to K.
Oh, yeah, okay, A through K.
As amended.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Demaco, aye.
Mantrick, aye.
Capello, aye.
Sakosha.
Hardikoff, aye.
Excellent. That brings us up to appointments. Appointed and elected terms expiring.
Yep, just keeping that top of mind for you. We'll be doing our typical annual review of appointments the select board will need to make. Again, we do those once the new board is seated following the election, but we want to start talking to folks that are interested in being reappointed and engaging those folks. And then obviously the elected positions are on there as well.
Awesome. On to staff reports.
Very briefly, just our work anniversaries for January. Amy Doherty, our finance administrator, who has obviously taken that position and made leaps and bounds of progress that have really advanced not only our professionalism, but our capabilities forward tremendously. We have our auditors coming day after tomorrow to start on the 2025 audit, which is something that we weren't even looking at into the fall when I first started in Barrington, the fall after the prior year, because it took so long to close the books and get everything buttoned up. And we're less than a week into the new year, and the auditors are coming in to start working on last year, which is a very good reflection of the work that she's done in Barrington. Aaron O'Day is the recreation administrative assistant, 6 years in Barrington. Jim Anderson, our first ever working facility manager, was hired 3 years ago this month. That's all I have.
Awesome. I love how it says working facilities manager too. MOAC.
3 items for signature: wet signature, administrative abatement, a settlement agreement, and a deed. That's it.
Excellent. No old business, no new business, and that is going to roll us right into select board reports.
So the zoning board of administration met in December. There was a variance that was approved back in October. Subsequent to that variance being approved, there was a request to have, essentially a request for rehearing by an abutter. There was a site walk in November after the request for rehearing was approved in November, and we had the rehearing on the variance in December. And it does seem that there was just some misunderstanding between the various property owners. At the end of the day, the objection to the original variance was not that significant, and the variance was approved for a second time.
Excellent. Dannon?
School board budget hearing, public hearing is tomorrow at middle school.
Okay.
And Wednesday, the ABC will meet and make their recommendations.
Perfect.
Not much coming out of the library. I didn't make those meetings.
I will say that, I mean, I travel down the corridor 125 all the time, and there's been consistent traffic over there, so it's nice seeing it get used.
Does anybody know the answer to the trivia question on their marquee? Is it thesaurus?
I don't know.
I haven't been meaning to stop in and ask that.
That's fun though.
Choice.
So planning board reviewed a four house subdivision on Route 4 and did approve that. There was a lengthy discussion about a property on Barrington Shores. Todd Green about a request to review the drainage changes an as-built campsite. And then lots of conversation about zoning amendments that planning board will move forward with, and discussion about form-based ordinances and how that will look. Because that is what we will be looking at in the town center. And although we didn't finalize completely that language, it looks like the form-based ordinances will apply only to the development, and we'll use that as a pilot to look at how well that works. It's a change for us because it's not looking at conservation versus traditional building. We're looking at walkable downtowns. Dover's done it since 2009, but that's a much more complex city than we have here. So lots of questions about it, but I think looking at it as a pilot for just that development is a reasonable one.
Awesome. Chair Heiderkoff?
Yeah, the Conservation Commission is moving their website to fall directly under the town's website at some point. There was discussion on the lake invasive funding proposal. Exciting news, we've conserved more land. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Connor can correct me, but Donegan property, it's by heirs, and I think it was 100 additional acres being conserved, Connor?
Plus or minus.
Yeah, so more conserved land, which is super exciting. Discussions about some enforcement actions that needed to take place. There was a beautiful trail walk on I call it the Temposi property, but off of Tibbetts Road. I think 12 community members participated recently in that. And I can't tell you that I have easily available to you the Energy Committee. Oh, yeah, I do. Hang on one second. Energy Committee, had an Affinity LED presentation. They're working on asking both the school and some other entities connected with town government to go LED and reduce some of their electrical usage. So that's exciting news. And then did a report out on solar costs for the town hall and had discussions in reference to their meeting with the school and what would be needed there for cost reduction, and further discussion on the Community Power Collective and some of their new policies that are taking place that could impact the town and its rates. And I think that's about it.
Excellent, thank you. What's shaking up over at the Parks and Rec is basketball season is in full swing. Next session of adult fitness programs are starting up this week. Also, before and after care registration is February 3rd. February 3rd, before and after care registration. That's a hot date, write it down. And then the latest brochure has been updated and published on the website to show all upcoming offerings and events. And that's what I have for the rec. So with that, I am going to go ahead and open up our last public comment of the meeting. And nobody in studio or online, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And I will entertain, there's no need for non-public, so entertain a motion.
I move we adjourn as of 8:08.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Mako, aye.
Trick eye.
Capiello, aye.
Scotia.